Your days are. I have built many practices and know what it's like to have to be ready for patients. But taking this time, I'm excited to share these 5 key secrets because I've had the privilege of working with over 1,000 practices now and helping them reach their dreams. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but only 1%, or actually it's less than 1% in the most recent studies of our profession and traditional chiropractic practices actually reach the 7-figure mark in annual revenues. And when I saw that study and realized that, it really broke my heart because being really blessed to come from a chiropractic family, and while my father was the executive vice president at Palmer College to David Palmer, growing up with all these resources, I was really lucky. I came out and was able to build 3 different 7-figure practices and beyond, and take that knowledge and help again other practices. And we found a really core connection between these successful practices, and that's what I'm going to share with you today is these 5 keys. And if you'll connect these within your practices, you can do it too. It's actually not as hard as you would think it is to get your practice to 7 figures. That's $83,000 in collections a month. We can get there. And if you're already there, we're going to help you go beyond that. And that's why this is beyond. And before we jump into those keys, I've got to share with you a little bit of an experience that started me on this journey of really understanding business and growth and scalability. And believe it or not, it started when I was 15 years old. You see, because my parents believed in such a strong work ethic, I had actually a newspaper route starting at age 8 and then had that all the way until age 14. So when 15 came around, my parents kind of looked at me like, what are you going to do now for work? Well, my best friend and I were just hanging out. It was late spring, summer was coming, and his dad walked in the room and he said, boys, what are you going to do this summer? And we kind of looked at each other and we're like, I don't know, hang out. And my dad's friend kind of looked at us laughing. He was a vice president to a bank, and he said, "Boys, we're gonna buy a house, and you're gonna remodel it, fix it up, and we're gonna sell it and make some money." And we looked at each other and we're like, awesome, but we have no idea how to do any of those things. My dad was an amazing father, and he taught me, I mean, incredible about chiropractic, but and as good as he was at fixing things, we didn't really have a lot of background in construction. So Bruce, my best friend's dad, set out. We drove around neighborhoods, and crazy enough, just a few blocks from my dad's office, we found this neighborhood, and we drove up in front of the house that you're seeing on the screen. And that house, I wish I had a before picture because it was didn't look like this. This is actually the after picture. This is actually I just grabbed off of Google Maps, but it was a shambles. And houses in that neighborhood at the time were going between $30,000 and $50,000. Well, his dad took Matt and myself, 2 15-year-old young boys, and made us do the negotiations to buy the house. We rented jackhammers and sledgehammers, and we jackhammered out these concrete sidewalks. We were just skinny little kids, man. We could hardly hold up that jackhammer. Um, and what his dad would do then is after we were ready to begin putting the house back together, we didn't have the skills to do that. And so he would hire a tradesman, whether it was an electrician or whether it was a plumber, they would come in and teach us the skill and then they would leave. And I don't know how he found these people, but they had so much patience with us because we would do the work, we would practice the skill, and then they would come back and change or check on our work, right? They would either have to fix it or they would have to rip it out or completely do it all over again. It was a little bit of a painful process and it took us a long time, but we slowly began putting this house back together and gained the skills of doing wiring, plumbing, finish sheetrock, mudding and taping. Um, and by the time we were done building this house, we put it back on the market. We bought it, believe it or not, for $5,000. I know that sounds crazy in today's economy, but the house really should have been condemned. It had a cracked foundation, and that's when we were able to get it so cheap. But we put $17,500 into it. We sold it for $37,000. And that pattern was incredible. And that's the pattern I want to share with you today that I learned at 15. And it starts with this: skills. We have to learn skills. And when we use those skills with the right mindset, we see impact that drives reward. This is the secret formula that I have used to change the way practices were operating that are doubling their profits. Because I found that our direct connection to our team, we can only scale as fast as our team has the skills and the mindset and the positive impact. You see, the average chiropractor only has 1.9 employees. It's really hard to build a seven-figure practice on 1.9 employees. Not every practice has to grow to this size, but I've had everything from one, right, when I started, to up to 40, and managing a 40 team member, 5 provider location. So this can be done, and this formula is the secret that if you learn to become a positive leader that trains our teams the right skills with the right mindset, and they can see they're connected to the impact of their work and they're rewarded. It creates a cycle that starts all over again with they want to learn more skills. When we sold that house and I got that cash in my hand, it was life-changing. In fact, his dad, being a banker, made sure that we got $100 bills when he paid us out, and it was again a life-changing experience because it was this reward. So guess what we did? Matt and I looked at each other, and his dad said, "What do you want to do with this money?" And he used this as an amazing teaching opportunity. He said, "What do you want to do with this money?" And of course, we both looked at each other like, "Let's go on a trip. Let's buy something." But we looked at him and said, "Let's do it again." And so we did. We reinvested that money and did it again. And my friend ended up making a career out of those skill sets. I didn't. I ended up obviously going into chiropractic, but it just infused my business sense. It infused me to want to do more and grow more. And being a child of a chiropractor, a son of a chiropractor, I looked at our profession. I was raised in it. I watched the reputation that we had in the industry. And at some point in my life, I made the decision that I wanted to impact our profession in a way where our business skills and our profitability got to the point where we could drive impact. We could create influence in the healthcare arena, and it takes money to do that. So we're going to go through some of these principles and drive that. And what we did is a study of the profession, and we found out that there is a very fascinating pathway that as we come out of school, most of us are in this associate kind of doctor. Some of us jump out and immediately start our own practice, but a lot of us come out as an associate, and we're very focused on our skills, our clinical skills, gaining the expertise on how to deliver our care. At some point, you get your confidence underneath you and you want to move to what's called a promoter. A promoter is where you're now opening up your practice and you realize you need team members, you need people on your team to grow, and you begin feeding patients. How do I track new patients? And that's a promoter, right? Once you see some success, you now move into an operator. And an operator is where you begin to learn systems, duplicatable systems that you can grow and scale with the size of your practice. Then at some point, you start to make a decision. Do I bring on my own associate, or do I continue to run just a single provider location? Well, there's no problem with running a single provider location. If that's your hopes and dreams and that's your vision, I high five you and just make that the greatest practice of your dreams. If you do want to have an associate doctor, I see too many doctors take that step and end up only a year or two later letting the associate go because they couldn't sustain the profitability of the practice. That's because you didn't develop your leadership skills. Knowing how to bring on an associate and scale a practice, scale the marketing to sustain now their patient schedule. At some point, you may even want to move to a high performer. A high performer is where you actually have 2 associates and you're able to scale back your own hours, treatment hours, so you can work more on the practice rather than in the practice. And then it's possible to move on to an expander where you're opening up multiple locations. And then what we call Evolution Boss. Evolution Boss isn't actually necessarily a direct line through these pathways. You get to your dream place, and then you begin having so many profits that it's purpose-driven profits. What do you do with those profits? Well, you build legacy, you build impact, you give back. You become an influencer in ways for your family and for your community that is life-changing. So I want to take that first principle of skills. You learn skills to become a doctor, or maybe you're a team member listening and you're at the front desk or you're billing. You've developed skills. But for our doctors here listening, at some point you hired a team member, one or many, and you decided at that very moment in time to transition your skills from not only doctor, but also a coach. You see, the coach-team member relationship is a sacred relationship because we're bringing on a team member to develop them, to help them become all that they can be in an environment and in a culture where one of the most important things we can drive is what we call safety. You see, the SEAL team, if I look at a team out there that has the most powerful example of a highly operating team of high trust, is there any better example than the Navy SEALs? And when you look at them, you know, Simon Sinek, some of you probably familiar with who Simon Sinek is, amazing, team leadership speaker. But he kind of breaks this down into high competency, low trust. So when a SEAL team starts choosing their team, they're kind of measuring them on these qualities. Uh, High competency meaning they're very efficient, but low trust meaning they're not always there when you need them. You can have low competency, low trust, obviously. You can have low competency, high trust. And then, of course, the beautiful one, high competency, high trust. Well, Simon asked the Navy SEALs, if you had to if you had somebody in front of you and you had to decide, they can't have high in both categories. Would you take high competency and a slight lower trust, or would you take high trust and slight lower competency? And you probably guessed it, they chose high trust over high competency. Well, why? Like, why is high trust so important in teamwork? Well, it comes down to, if we're going to generate the most amazing patient experience in your community, then we have got to trust each other to deliver their portion of the patient experience at an amazing quality. And we call that a quality output. And we'll talk about measuring that quality output here in just a minute. But as we look at this, I want to throw up our first poll here, because how many of you are measuring or tracking stats on a spreadsheet? Some of you may be just generating Chirotouch reports. I know it's common in our industry that you're actually tracking stats. You've learned how to track stats. So we'll throw up that poll here, and you can answer that poll, just yes or no. And what percentage of you are taking the time to have an office manager or maybe a practice a team member punch the numbers into a spreadsheet? Cool. It looks like we're getting maybe, let's drop it a little bit. We're getting 70-30. So 7 out of the 10 of you are taking the time to punch numbers into a spreadsheet. So that's interesting. You're using the numbers, you're using the data in a little bit different way than, say, just from a report. Well, we're going to talk about that because there's a reason why you're tracking those numbers and measuring that quality output. And so we'll look at that. This is the reason why when we transition skills now, to mindset, that mindset's such a powerful key in these 5 keys, because what we have found, if I asked you this question, um, how many of you don't know how to run a front desk, or something simple like that? How many of you don't know how to, when we phrase a question like that, you don't know how to, you rarely get a hand to raise in the room. But when we ask a question in a positive manner, and you've done this, if you've trained with your team or you are a team member, either side of this, you can relate to this. If I catch myself asking an employee, do you know how to run this report? Do you know how to talk to a patient about this conversation? Inevitably, we say yes. It can be a sheepish yes, but we see most team members say yes. And it's because we don't like to admit we don't know something. And the biggest reality is that we don't know what we don't know. So how do we actually admit? We found in these highly successful practices that they found a way to help a team member identify what they don't know, and created a safe place from day one. When that team member came onto the team, they created a safe place that a team member can raise their hand and ask for help and not feel judged, meaning that they are probably going to lose their job if they raise their hand too many times. But do you see the dichotomy that creates? Their mindset now is that I don't want to raise my hand. I don't want the doctor or practice owner to know I can't do this, although they may or may not be aware of how that's impacting their performance. So we need a tool. If there was a tool that existed that could show a team member their impact on the patient experience in real time, oh my gosh, all of a sudden there's transparency. And we do not use the word accountability. That's often thrown out there in leadership. We want our team members to be accountable. I don't use that phrase. I use the word responsible. See, when we hire a team member, we're hiring them to help us create and materialize a vision. And that vision, when we're approaching that vision, feels awesome. It's winning. It's incredible. And we see our practices that are moving towards that vision have so much to celebrate. So here's the cycle that CT Thrive was built for you and your team, is to recognize that employees generate data. Now, if there's only 2 of you, that's okay. You still generate it all. There's just a small number of you generating, but it's the same data. It's the same volume or same buckets of data. So that data needs to be captured in a little bit different way than how we're currently capturing data in Chirotouch or other data sources. And then we need to quickly analyze that data in a way that is so quick and so easy that we know where we need to develop skills. So this is the feedback loop, right? This is the performance. So out of curiosity, our poll 2 is, how many of you are using your data or reports to identify and schedule training for your team? So throw that out for me. How many of you are actually using your data to identify skills that need to be trained within your team before your actual team raises their hand? Yeah, that's what I thought. We're 7. So 3 out of 4 of you are not using your data in a meaningful way, and that's that's the problem we wanted to solve, is to help you do that in a meaningful way that's so powerful that you don't even have to think about it, and that's what we simplified for you. So when we look at this is a profit formula. This is impact now. This is taking that skill set with the right mindset. And I want you to see how this impacts you. This is CT Thrive. This is looking at the real deal. So this is the data feed. We have a data feed for each key metric. This is what we call a KPI, key performance indicator. And you can see there that in January 2019, we had a serious drop in performance, 83%. It's because it was a new team member. They hired, and the old team member was doing okay, but then they left and a new team member came in, and the onboarding wasn't very good. This practice reached out and said, help, help, help. We've dropped and we aren't getting this, coming back up fast enough. So they started the training on the right skills, and we started seeing the impact. And that's where you see the data come back up to normal. Now, look at the difference. If we take the average collection per visit and we multiply that times the average number of visits in a practice, if we stayed at 83% kept appointment rate, in a month, we would collect $59,000. But if we did that same thing, not changing anything but this one KPI, this one profit formula, we see a difference of $59,000 go up to $66,000. Well, you add that up over 12 months, and that's a difference of $78,000. How many of you would like an additional $78,000 at the end of the year in your pocket? I don't need a poll for that. I know what that outcome's going to be. That's the power of understanding data flow, identifying the skills that need to be trained on, letting the team member see the impact of their skills, and driving reward. You see, I get the question all the time, how do you implement a proper bonus system? Well, we need an entire webinar for that. That'll be saved for another day. But this is the key. It's called profits. You have to have profits to create a proper bonus system. So using that now, we talk about a data waterfall effect. You see, it all starts with marketing. And that data is being generated. It's being generated on your website. It's being generated on your Facebook. It's being generated on Instagram. It's being generated on Google and all over the place. It's being generated and you're asking for referrals and generating referrals. There's actually 6 buckets of marketing data. I don't know if you knew that or not, but if you want to never stress about new patients again, you just have to get your 6 marketing buckets working. So that generates marketing data. The next one, exam and report of findings data. That then flows into scheduling data. That scheduling data flows into treatment data. That treatment data flows into billing and finance, which then at the end of the day creates data of profits. That's overhead, that's expenses, and we see all of that data, and that's the data flow. We call that the patient experience. That's just the better name for it. Your patients or your potential patients interact with your brand, your voice, your practice, and it generates data, and we break that data into this waterfall effect. So when we look at marketing, at the end of the day, there's a KPI, a key performance indicator that we capture. It'll be on the top left-hand corner of your marketing dashboard for you and your team to see. You can see from what referral sources these are coming from. We can see all sorts of cool data in there, and there's what we call lead metrics or data that feed the new patients. The key with this, here's the secret, write this down, is that, KPIs, we set those as monthly goals because months are stable where weeks aren't. But monthly goals should be pretty stable. You should be hitting those on a consistent basis. What you want to become a master at to be a 7-figure practice is you have to get good at the team member, empowering the team member to know their lead data that flows to the KPI on a daily basis and becoming responsible for it. That they master the skills to drive the lead data to it. Now, I don't have time to show you what all of that lead data is, but that's in your CT training. That'll come to you with your account. We track percent starts. We do that in both cash and number of people coming into the practice. We then track at the front desk percent kept appointments and percent recare. We have systems in place to help you and your team helping patients make their next appointment before they walk out of the practice. We track that. Total adjusted production. Again, if you're cash-based, then just total production is fine. But if you're insurance-based, we want to see write-offs. We want to know how much we're writing off. And that's really nice when we can see that per insurance company or provider or payer. And then we want to see what percent of that production are we actually collecting, and because we can influence that, we can actually really capture that. It's very common in our industry to give big prepaid discounts if you're doing that kind of work. You really need to track how much is that costing us and how much is that impacting us, and just making better decisions. And then of course at the end of the day, profits. I want to empower you. In fact, my life mission is to get you profits through the roof so that you can build the life you wanted to build. You can have the impact in your community that you can have. You can impact your team. Your team can have better quality of lives. It impacts everything. It changes everything. So we contact and bring in your data from multiple data sources. We connect to your Google Analytics. It takes 2 seconds. I mean, it's so fast. We connect to QuickBooks Online, and it is only the online version where our, data is all moving that way. We want to capture it from the cloud and bring it in. It's a lot more stable connection that way than just from the other types of QuickBooks. And then of course Chirotouch, then of course Facebook and Facebook marketing. And that allows you for a pretty complete data feed that we need to look at those 6 categories of patient experience data. So here's my question, because so many of you are working with marketing agencies or a marketing person to help you with your data. And how many of you have noticed that these marketing agencies want to prove to you their value by showing you certain key metrics that show how great they're doing, but you're frustrated with the number of new patients that are actually coming in. So you feel completely competent of how to communicate with your marketing person or agency on the right data to hold them responsible for the role that they play. How many of you feel comfortable? Okay, we're coming around about 50-50. So I'm proud of those who are. Those who aren't, it's okay. We can empower you. You'll that in part of our training, we actually write in your CT Thrive training, you're going to go through courses on this data and how to talk the data, measure the data, master the data, because 7-figure practices have mastered this data. So I'm going to exit out of this screen for just a second. If it will let me, it's actually, I've got to somehow, there we go. Let me switch over to now actual BlueiQ. So this is BlueiQ. This is, I'm sorry, CT Thrive powered by BlueiQ. This is the actual login. So when you log in here, you'll see your office here. If you have multiple locations, you'll just see them all line up right here. And we go into office setting, and there's your data sources. So here's your connectors. You get connected, and now you have your data flow. And immediately we have the dashboards on the left-hand side broken down to the patient experience of marketing, exam and case acceptance, front desk, treatment, production, billing, and financial, and profits. It's all right there. So on those dashboards, as I mentioned to you, there's the data flow. So here's the KPI in this top left-hand corner. As a team, you're watching how you're marching towards that. We've broken it down by color. You see, you'll come in and you'll identify your goal. Where do we need to be healthy for this practice? And then it breaks it down by color. Blue means it exceeds expectations. Green means you're right on track. Yellow means you're almost there, but this will let you know that in your training, it's not necessarily a skill training issue, it's more of it's a mindset training issue, where red is a skill set training issue. This is how you'll know what you need to focus on with your team. So as you do that, you'll be able to go into the data flow and actually look at the trend. You can look at your last 90 days or last year, this year. We have all these custom time frames. You can look at it by weekly, by daily, a lot of different ways to look at that data. And then you can go into the patients themselves, and we have all that in here. So because of our time, I'm not going to go through every dashboard, but you can really see here, we've got a dashboard for each one with those KPIs and then the lead metrics that drive and feed the stability of the KPI. So that's the data. That's how we're watching the data. It's available for you to in real time. We're pulling that data up into the cloud. There's just a little data connector that sits right there with your Chirotouch to push it into the cloud. It's all HIPAA compliant, and this is accessible through your browser and from anywhere. You can access this from home or other locations. So what we did then is we wanted to build anchored habits for you and your team of these highly successful practices. Would you like to know what those anchored habits are? This is the anchored habits for the front desk and back office. This is what they do on a daily basis. This is what the most successful practices are doing that we built into a workflow for you and your team. So here we go. We have appointment insights, new patient insights, production insights, and then another one coming soon, which is called financial insights. Well, when you click into the appointments, You'll see now your appointment list for the day, but we always have the front desk go back to yesterday, where the back office always goes to tomorrow. And you'll kind of see why you do that. We quickly pull out the patients that left your practice with no next appointment. And with that happening, you pull up that patient list. There's the broken appointments, so you can sort them by different ways. You can see what they completed on their procedures. You can see who the appointment provider was. You have the contact information, so you can go right into CT In Touch, and you can now send a very personable message. Hey, Mary, I'm so sorry that you snuck out of the practice yesterday without me scheduling your next appointment. I see that you normally come in weekly. It looks like you like Mondays at 9 o'clock. I have you down for next Monday at 9 o'clock. Just send me back a thumbs up if that works for you. That's how we do it. And 80% of the time we get back a thumbs up. And the 20% of the time we don't, we just then have a conversation with that patient through text, because again, it's so much easier to communicate with our patients that way through CT In Touch, that we'll be able to get them back on the schedule without even picking up the phone. That way you're still able to give full focus on the patients in front of you, and be able to handle the patient really 5 text messages at the same time as you're working with those different conversations. We have account balances in here. We have family members with account balances that left. That means patients that came in yesterday, we had missed opportunities that we should have collected for their family accounts. We have new patient tracking. I can see when the new patients have next appointments. I can actually expand this to a weekly view, go into last week, and I can see right here, we would have a big red flag if there was a new patient with no next appointment. That way we can follow up with that patient. We can search these by referral source, so I know what my most effective referral source is generating our new patients. So there's so much cool data in here, and sorted in ways that make it fast, because efficiency is the other key secret of these highly profitable practices. You've got to develop scalable systems that are very efficient. And that's what this is all about. So because today's Thursday, the back office should go till tomorrow. They should look at how many patients are coming in with cash account balances. Well, right here, I can pull up that list. I can see the balance, I can see the case type, I can click on that, and I can see lifetime production of the patient. How cool is that? And how much we've actually collected of that lifetime production. I can see on the insurance or cash side, see this patient is just cash, but if I go into this case type, Blue Cross Blue Shield, I can see that they have an insurance balance of $397, and it gives me my accounts, my aging. On both of them, I can see how much is aging, and the back office reconciles the account so that when the patient shows up to the practice that day for their appointment, the front desk has the confidence. You see, this is the trust that the other team member is doing their part, and if they trust their team member that they have reconciled the accounts, they can now have that conversation with the patient. Hey, we have a balance of $142 today. Before I have you go back for your appointment, how would you like to take care of that balance? You see, we're completing the revenue cycle management. That is a key important piece. And that, again, is a completely entire webinar on its own. But that is one of the secrets that will allow you to do that. They then go into the family members with account balances. And by clicking on these, you'll be able to click on the patient name, immediately go to family. There's the family with account balances, and you can see those account balances and case types. This is just an account balance on a different case type, so you'll have access to those case types. So it's all there for you at your fingertips. So slick, so easy. It just makes it really nice for you and your team to be able to dial that in. Now, one of the other key secrets that we look at is impact, right? Impact was one of our key principles here, the 5 keys. Impact, we look on a daily basis of what we see 2 lists. Now, I only have one of these to show you today because the other one comes out this weekend. So, and it's one of them is patients who were here 30 days ago that still have no next appointment. The other key list is patients that you're now losing. You're losing patients out the back door, meaning the statistics show it's 4 times easier to get one of your patients back than it is to get a new patient. And here we are monitoring all of these marketing metrics, but where are you monitoring your net growth? Let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to go to the month phrase, go to last month, and right here it's going to calculate your net growth score. And for this practice, it's -21. That's painful. That's a practice that does not have good recare systems in place. That means 58 new patients. That's a ton of new patients, and yet 79 slipped out the back door, went into inactivity. You see, again, in your training, your front desk will be trained how to communicate with these patients. How do you develop an irresistible offer to get these patients back in? What are the industry best practices to communicate with these patients in a way that attracts them back to you and your purpose? And then we can see that net growth score begin coming up into a positive growth. You can't reach 7 figures if that number is negative. Do you know that number? Because I haven't met a practice that does without having CT Thrive. Now, there's so many cool ways to sort your data. You can come into these interactive charts. You can pull up these completed versus missed versus rescheduled. You can do this by provider. You can do this by procedure, appointment status. You can really begin looking at all of those data points, and they create these patient lists. Well, the reason why this is powerful is because you may provide procedures in your practice that you want to follow up with that patient to see how they're doing after that procedure. So now, from anywhere, you now have access to that contact information without having to go into CT or your Chirotouch. It's all right here. You have their contact information. This is also powerful because look, here's cell phone data missing. We flagged the front desk to let you know there's data missing and that the front desk isn't getting these fields completed in Chirotouch. Again, best practices, a responsible team member, a team member that we trust, a team member that we want to bonus and reward. They have to be responsible. And that's what this is all building, is a culture of teamwork, a culture of responsibility. Super cool. So you can toggle this over to production insights, and then we can see how much production did we do last month. You can look at adjusted versus gross. You can drill into this. You can actually see, based upon your different production sites, how much of that you're doing. You can drill into that and actually see your procedure codes. I see too many that have 50 different adjustment codes. I mean, it's crazy. Really getting better at using your right codes and training your team to use the right codes so that you don't end up with, the reality is, you've heard the saying, garbage in, garbage out. We've got to get good data. Good data ensures good reporting. And that's what CT Thrive really helps you dial in. So I'm going to go back to my other screen here now that you've seen some of that, because one of the cool things that we're doing with you is taking your data mobile. This is one of the most powerful things that CT Thrive does for you. We've built a system to help you reach and achieve goals, highly performing practices. These 7-figure practices, every one of them are setting goals and working with their team members. Which goal are you responsible for? And the cool thing about CT Thrive is you can assign a key metric to a team member, and their initials go on that metric. They're responsible for driving that metric, and then we're just working with the skills to help them achieve it, right? So when you look at this mobile data, this is right on your phone. You can look at this at any time. It updates every 10 minutes. It's a beautiful thing for you and your team to be looking at. And daily, you can see we're toggling back between daily and monthly. On the daily, you're able to see, did we close the rings today? And that's the goal. Close your rings. Working with the team, did we close our rings? This is what it is. You consecutively close those rings, you're going to hit your goals. You're going to hit that magic number that's going to push you into 7 figures and beyond. We can drill into that data. We can sort it into new patients and actually look at geographical data. What zip codes are our new patients coming from? What % of our database is actually active versus going inactive by time frames? Which one of our marketing referral sources is driving us, and where else do we need to put some energy into? There's a lot of drill downs, so I don't have time to go into them all. You'll see this in the videos and on the demo, but Super cool. I mean, it just empowers you. And there's all sorts of filters on the bottom to be able to really analyze the data. I want to share with you by harnessing this data. I took Dr. Rob here, and he called me because he was actually selling his practice in his own words. And if there's team members on this call, just forgive me. But as a practice owner, sometimes we feel like this. He said, I'm tired of feeling like a babysitter. Like I literally lost my purpose with my patients. I was dealing with so many team member problems that I didn't enjoy taking care of patients. Well, as he was trying to sell his practice, there wasn't the value there, right? Because you analyze the data and there wasn't profit margins. And all of you, I don't care if you're on this call and you're still an associate doctor or you are a brand new doctor, at some day you're going to sell your practice. And out of all the professions out there, it's really sad that chiropractors are walking away with only a 5-figure sell. And it's breaking my heart. And that's what Rob was facing. And so luckily, the person his broker said, would you go work with BlueiQ and get your practice profitable and then call me back? So Rob calls me up. He says, Corey, I'm giving you 6 months to get my practice up. I've got to grow my profits by 20% or it's just not worth selling my practice. And I said, okay, well, let's go through. Let's talk about your team. Is there a high trust factor? Is there a high competency factor? Do they trust each other? Well, the problem was he had not built a culture of trust. The team members didn't really know how to monitor or connect their piece of the patient experience. Well, how would they even know what skills to work on? And that's what was happening. He was having a weekly team meeting, but he had no idea what to train on other than marketing, and how to collect more money. I mean, that was it. And this is what I had to share with Rob is that profits is not what we focus on. Profits is a byproduct. It's all the other key parts that then generate profits. And I'm happy to announce that in 6 months, we doubled his collections. We far exceeded his 20%. Now, I'm not saying this is common for every practice we work with, but this was what happened when he applied the principles. He was able to sell an amazing profit, and he is now retired living in the Mediterranean. he's loving life. Dr. Prax called me and said, Dr. Frugley, I can't do this anymore. It was end of the year. We sat down to write out our end of the year team bonuses, and we needed to fund some of our accounts, and they had to take out a bridge loan just to cover their end of year expenses. Well, if you're doing something like that, that tells me we're not highly profitable. Something's broken. With the principles of CT Thrive, this is their data feed line of their profits. They skyrocketed. And imagine the peace of mind that they were able to enjoy because they now had money to share with their team. They had money to reinvest. They had money to fund their legacy, and they continue to grow and thrive. And that's what this is all about. So as we talk about this, let's talk about where you are today and where you want to get to. When we begin looking at your data flow, we identify where you are on that very first chart that we showed you. Are you in a promoter phase? Are you in a leadership phase? Are you in the expander phase? Wherever you are, there are key steps to get to the next level. And that download, which you can get for free, is part of this process that you can get because it helps you kind of know what you're feeling, know what you should focus on to get to the next level. But at the core of every step is understanding the patient experience generated data. Because I want to empower you and your team to be able to look at the data and not have to have a team member raise their hand and say, I need help, right? you're going to come together already knowing that that team member needs to master some skills, or they need to change their mindset, or they need to identify what's keeping them from their significant impact. One of the key things that I talked to Dr. Rob's team about as I interviewed them after this experience, and I asked the front desk manager, I said, what was the biggest difference between where you guys were 6 months ago and where you are today? And with tears, as she got choked up, she said, Corey, the biggest difference was I could clearly see how I was impacting the patient experience. And there was just transparency across the board. And I didn't have to ask for help because other team members would come to me and we would strategize on better systems. I wouldn't have to go to the practice owner and sit and try to figure it out. Like, we knew where the weakness was, and we then knew how to implement the right steps that drove the right impact. Thank you for giving us the vision, the visualization that we needed to identify these holes and get our practice profitable. Skills with the right mindset, with clearly seeing how they impact, rewarding the positive impact will lead a hunger and a thirst and a desire for your team to continue their skills development. I'm sure you've experienced that just firing a team member because they're not performing is expensive. It's expensive to hire. It's expensive to train. It's expensive to onboard. So the best thing that we can do is build, nurture, grow our team members and empower them to help you join in creating the most incredible patient experience in your community. And that is how you will dominate your space. That is how you will achieve your vision. And that is how you're going to build the dream life that I know is waiting for you to obtain. Now, many of you may be feeling like this. Great picture, right? I know. You're thinking, how do I get from where I am today to where I need to be? And we've made it simple. In fact, step one is as simple as this. It is our free 4-step practice profitability assessment. This is blowing our Chirotouch family's minds, because when a doctor gets on, it's us connecting the data pusher into your data for free. We're pulling that data up into the cloud and we're running it through the profit formulas. And we can quickly, in 20 minutes, show you, are your profits optimized? How are you doing against industry best practices? We can uncover your hidden revenues, where it's leaking, where are your leaky buckets, where is there money sitting on the table that we can quickly capture? And how do we find patients that are slipping through the cracks? Because these are the tools, these are the anchored habits for your front desk, that by quickly changing that, they will then have the ability to drive the schedule, right? A full schedule. And then we run it through a formula for you. And as we finish that, we run it in a calculation. By fixing just a couple of these things that we find, we are showing practices their 90-day, 6-month, and 12-month return on their collections on where they can get to. And I'm very happy to announce that after doing this, we're on average showing a doctor between 20 and 200% improvement in your collections. 20 to 200%. Now, where you fall into that range, I don't know. I don't know till we look at your data. So we have an amazing team standing by, and the way that you sign up for this is you just simply go to www.getctthrive.com. At getctthrive.com, you can watch more testimonials, more case studies, doctors that have been using the software for a year. You can listen to their experience, how it impacted their culture. You can also download some free profit formulas. I share with you 9 of my favorite profit formulas that every practice should know. You can download that free download that goes over that profit provider, the 7-figure provider, and you can have that free download. But if you're ready to go through your profit formula or practice profitability assessment, you'll see the button on getctthrive.com. Click the button. You'll schedule a time for our team to install that data connection. That data uploads overnight, so we don't slow down your Chirotouch, while you're seeing patients. Not that our software does, just the first data pull it's a lot of data. But after that, we don't slow down your system at all because it updates every 10 minutes, so it's super quick. Again, completely HIPAA compliant, completely protected. Again, we're a certified partner with Chirotouch, and they've vetted all of our systems, so it's beautiful. And I'm telling you, this, whether you move forward with CT Thrive or not, this 20 to 30 minute session is a game changer. And it will help you dial in exactly what you and your team need to focus on that will change your future. Because either you can keep doing what you're doing, and next year at this time, you'll probably still be where you're at. I mean, that's what statistics show. Or you can take massive action, apply a new tool, change your operating systems, and do what our CT family is doing. And that is increasing the revenues by 20 to 200%. So go to CT Thrive, getctthrive.com, sign up for that profit formula course. There's a lot of people on this webinar. There's a lot of people that are going to be watching this in the next 48 hours. So I highly recommend doing that right now. Open up your browser, type in getctthrive.com, and go to that site and click on I want that, because those appointments are limited, right? We can't do 100 of these in the next week. So the sooner you get on and the sooner you schedule it, the better time, the sooner available time you'll get for that. We've cleared out the schedule enough that there should be enough to handle a decent volume. But I would, if you want one sooner than later, I would jump on there and get that done. Questions? I left.
Dr.
Yeah.
Oh, I do have a couple questions, Dr. Corey.
Please,
Sorry for
please.
jumping in. I did want to say I can actually put up a poll question if people are interested in getting one of those appointments and they're not able to get on the website at the moment.
Yeah.
They can indicate that they want more info, and then we can shoot off the link for them.
Perfect.
So I'll throw that up on the screen for those on the line. If you do wanted to be contacted for that consultation, please let us know. We'll get you some information. And if we do have a couple more minutes. Dr. Corey, I have a couple questions if we can maybe
Please.
jump through some of these. First off, Kristen, Michelle, a few others have asked if this webinar is recorded. Yes, it is being recorded. It will be shared on CT Community under the Town Halls section in the recorded videos area. So you will be able to find that there. And then a couple other points. Lori was asking about what is the kind of the one thing in terms of marketing that you've seen to flip the dial. Is there one strategy that you've uncovered that more of your practices have ventured into? I know it's kind of a general question, but
that's okay.
Anything pointed in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's so cool about the connections with Facebook and Google Analytics is we look at the effectiveness of those coming to your website. And are they converting? Are they actually moving into taking a call to action? And what we're seeing in the industry is really ineffective websites. They need some help. And this is a great opportunity to be able to meet with your website, whoever's in charge of your website, and look at the data together and actually hold them accountable. The other cool piece is the Facebook marketing. You're seeing your lead acquisition cost. And you can run 2 simultaneous ads, and you can actually see what's performing better for not only a lead acquisition cost, but then the money coming back into the practice, because you can filter your collections by referral source. So super powerful to be able to look at that and then make the copy changes in the underperforming ad. And then, like I said, there's mastering your 6 marketing buckets, and really as becoming part of the CT Thrive community. We have a CT Thrive Facebook group where you can ask other people using CT Thrive, and we can this as a community talk about, what are the things that are making the biggest differences. And it's really cool to be in that group and be able to use the tools more effectively.
That's actually really interesting that you've mentioned being able to translate what you find in the data with changes on your website. Because the next question that was up, and I'll try to keep it brief, is how do you communicate your findings to your marketing team or to others who are handling some of these messages? I know you put up one poll question about communicating the reports, but how would you recommend one actually does this? Is it summarizing the findings? Is it sharing actual reports? What does that look like?
Yeah, great question. So the cool thing about the way CT Thrive was built is that you can invite your marketing agency, marketing person into your platform. So they actually become a user. Now there's user permission, so you can share with them just one dashboard, or you don't have to share with them HIPAA compliant data. You can choose completely control all of that. So when you share that data with them, you begin a culture with that you're creating a culture that you're saying, hey, here's the data. I want you to know I'm watching the data. Here's our definition of success. And then we're all working towards building that definition of success. So what we teach and what we train is whoever's responsible for that data is coming to you now already. Like, we already know about the data, so it's not taking the time to report on the data. It's time to strategize on how to improve the data. And whoever's working for you, remember, they're an employee of you. They're working for you to drive your vision and your quality output, which in this case should be new patients. They should be coming to you if it's underperforming with the strategy already in place for you to review and approve, change, or not approve. And that's the successful loop that these practices are doing that changes everything.
Love it. I love giving other people that accountability and really challenging them to take the data and make movements and take action. So
Yeah.
that is fantastic. Well, we are right at the top of the hour. So thank you, Dr. Corey, for joining us today. We just have a couple last things to wrap up our presentation today. Just wanted to remind everybody that when you close out of today's session, there will be a short survey just to get some of your feedback. We would appreciate if you would take that survey. Today's session is recorded. It will be posted online, as I just shared. We also have 2 other upcoming town halls where you can learn about documentation as well as coding and billing. Those are the dates there. You can register for those as well as on our town hall section on CT Academy. So with that, Dr. Corey, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your expertise in this area. Hopefully you have helped to open up some of our DC's eyes as far as what they should be looking for and how they can use that information to improve what they're doing and to motivate their staff to all work together. So thank you for that lesson. It's very valuable, and I hope a lot of people have taken it to heart.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute privilege, and love being part of the Chirotouch community.
We'd love to have you as well. Thank you, everyone who joined us today. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we will touch base on the next town hall webinar. Have a great one. Thank you. Bye bye.